The Minnesota Wild will face the dynamic duo of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl tonight at XL Energy Center. We look at how the Wild's own dynamic duo of Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello stacks up as we preview tonight's game today on Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. And just as a reminder, Locked On Wild is free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we preview tonight's matchup against the red-hot Edmonton Oilers as they bring in two of the best players in the NHL, the dynamic duo of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. We look at how the Wild can counter with Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello and the history that both of them could potentially break in tonight's game. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, your veteran captain of the show with well over a decade's worth of experience covering your favorite Minnesota sports teams, being a fan of your favorite sports teams for well longer than that, and happy to be with you on a Tuesday edition of the show. We're going with the dynamic duo theme here today because I had a chance to see the new Batman movie over the weekend. Loved it, by the way. But it got me thinking. Every Batman has the sidekick. Every good superhero has the sidekick. And we get a chance to see maybe the greatest example currently in the NHL of superhero and sidekick with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl here this evening. Two of the best players in the NHL and two of the highest point total accumulators in the NHL as well. So led me to be a little curious as to how the Wild's own Batman and Robin can stack up in tonight's matchup. We'll talk about the game a little bit more as we get into the episode, but in looking at, we're seeing something truly historic this season with the chemistry that Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello have cultivated. It started last year, and it has blossomed into something just next level this season. And you look at the course of Minnesota sports, and, we've had some pretty good dynamic duos throughout the entire Minnesota sports landscape. I mean, you had Randy Moss and Chris Carter with the Minnesota Vikings. You had Joe Mauer and Justin Morneau with the Minnesota Twins. Kevin Garnett, Stephon Marbury, just to name the first few that come off the top of my head. There are certainly plenty more of them as well, but just this player that is kind of the one that gets all of the recognition, all of the headlines, all of the publicity. And you have the other player that slides in under the radar and has, fantastic stats themselves. We definitely are getting that with Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello this season. Kaprizov in the top 10 in points. He is going to break the Wild's franchise record for goals in a single season. He already broke the points mark for this Minnesota Wild team in a single season. And so he's getting a lot of press for it, and rightfully so. But his sidekick in this is no slouch himself. Matt Zuccarello having a career season. He is he's poised to break the all-time assists mark for the Minnesota Wild in a single season. Now, Kirill is expected to break it as well, but Zuccarello will be the first one to break it here with his next assist, which ironically could end up coming on Kirill Kaprizov's goal to break the all-time scoring record for the Minnesota Wild in a single season. So we could see these two both eclipse history on the same goal. And just for context, because I was curious just how good the connection has been. So Kirill's got 42 goals. Zuccarello has 22 himself. So they have accounted for 64 goals this season between the two of them. Now, if you look at one player assisting the other, so Kaprizov assisting Zuccarello, Zuccarello assisting Kaprizov, they have assisted each other. Of those 64 goals, they've assisted each other 33 times. So Matt Zuccarello has assisted Kirill Kaprizov on 22 of his 42 goals. And Kirill Kaprizov has assisted Matt Zuccarello on 11 of his 22. That is some next level chemistry between these two guys. And I think if you look through the history of Minnesota Wild hockey, you've always had a Marian Gaborik. You've had a player that is, the clear-cut top guy on the team, and you've had a bunch of complementary players that kind of fill in underneath. You maybe if you're looking for like the ultimate top pairing, you could put Gaborik with even just looking back at some of the high scorers with Gaborik on the roster, you could probably go Brian Rolston and Marian Gaborik, but there was never that solid, clear-cut guy that helped Gaborik get all of his goals and vice versa. And we're seeing it with Zuccarello and Kaprizov, is that they have that innate ability to assist each other on goals and to just next level passes, next level thoughts as to where the other player is going to be. And so Matt Zuccarello may not be the second best player on this team. He is certainly an important part of what this team has done this season. But we may be seeing the best true superhero sidekick for this Minnesota Wild team that they've had in their history. Kaprizov is probably already near the top of the list, and should be, of best Wild players to ever do it. But Matt Zuccarello and Kaprizov's chemistry that they've put together is something you do not see. It's Tom Brady and Randy Moss level, where they are able to do things that few others can. Some of the passes that they've been able to complete to each other for goals are just defy logic. And so this Kaprizov-Zuccarello connection, it's fitting that they both stand to break Minnesota Wild history at the same time, and will probably do it on the same goal. It'll be probably an assist from Zuccarello. Kaprizov will score, and that will lead to most assists in a single season, most goals in a single season, and that will reestablish the Wild's team goals scored in a single season as well. All because these guys have been so good together. It has propelled this team to heights that previously we would only have been able to dream about, and now they're happening right in front of us. So enjoy what we have seen from the Minnesota Wild so far this season. We tried to kind of look back on some of the historical records that have already broken last week and preview the records that still could fall. And so, as much as we gear up and move towards the playoffs, it is important to take a step back and to truly enjoy what we're seeing, just because of how rare it is and how rare it's been in the history of this team. So enjoy that, because we're going to see maybe a further developed version of this dynamic duo chemistry when the Oilers come to town tonight with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Let me tell you what, they are on an absolute heater coming into this game. And so we'll take a look at just how hot the Edmonton Oilers are coming into tonight's game as we continue to gear you up for tonight's matchup here on Locked on Wild. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happens. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay absolutely nothing. It is as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. So check out Shady Rays to get your sunglasses done right. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting, stats, and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, including league reviews and news, such as this year's NBA playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and so much more. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. You can find it all at BetOnline, where the game starts. Continuing today's episode of Locked on Wild, and again, thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Once your first listen of the day is done, make sure that you head over to the newly formed Locked on Sports Minnesota to check out the Ron Johnson Show, which is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Continuing to preview tonight's matchup against the Edmonton Oilers. And I mentioned the Edmonton Oilers coming in, they are red hot. They just lost on Saturday to the Colorado Avalanche, 2-1 in a shootout. But coming into this game, the Oilers are 12-2 in their last 16 games. 12-2 in their last 16 games. And it's been a variety of things that have led to the Oilers coming up with wins. They have certainly had some good goaltending over this stretch, but a lot of it has been that dynamic duo of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Since the month of March began, Connor McDavid has 14 goals, 19 assists, for a total of 33 points since the month of March began. Leon Draisaitl has 14 goals, 13 assists, for 27 points since the month of March began. And so these two guys are on absolute meteor level production. McDavid already with 8 points in April, 5 goals, 3 assists. And so like I said, not only has it been the goaltending that has helped propel Edmonton through this stretch, but their offense has been absolutely scorching hot. And because those two guys have been so good, they also, in the second half of the season, have gotten Evander Kane going once again. He has 14 goals since the second half of the season began. And so you look at a two-headed monster in the McDavid Draisaitl connection, but having that third option, that Evander Kane option, and he comes in with 11 goals since the month of March began and 8 assists, so 19 points for Evander Kane since the month of March began. So you got 3 solid scoring options that have been propelling this team to a ton of just desperately needed wins that have gotten them back into the second spot in the Pacific Division playoff race, which, thanks to the Los Angeles Kings going into absolute meltdown mode against the Minnesota Wild, now the Oilers are the ones in second in the Pacific Division, and they got a nice 4-point cushion over the Los Angeles Kings. So this is a very big game for the Minnesota Wild, but I think the Wild do have some advantages in a couple of key areas that could lead to them coming away with the win. The Wilds, though, as we saw in the game against the Kings, Marc-Andre Fleury able to rebound down the stretch in that game. And you look at some of the goalie performances for this Wild team. Marc-Andre Fleury with the Minnesota Wild, now 4-1 with a 2.44 goals against average and a 926 save percentage. Cam Talbot is 9-0-2 in his past 11 appearances with a 2.34 goals against average and a 918 save percentage. So both of those guys have really played well despite the last couple of starts. Obviously, the game against Nashville was not great, and bad start to the game against the Kings. But you can't argue with what Marc-Andre Fleury did down the stretch. He had several just huge saves against the Kings. So goaltending has certainly been a big part of the equation for the Minnesota Wild. Goaltending for the Oilers has been so-so. I mean, you look at the numbers after the All-Star break, the Oilers are 19-9-3 since the All-Star break. But Mike Smith has been basically a average goalie, 9-7-1, 2.98 goals against average, and a 904 save percentage. It's Mikko Koskinen that has been the one to kind of take the reins of the goalie position for the Oilers. He's 9-2-2, 2.85 goals against average, and a 911 save percentage. So that was the Achilles heel for this team pretty much all season. And like I said, it wasn't as though the goaltending was blowing people out of the water over this 12-2-2 stretch. I mean, there were several games that they're winning. They had a game they won against the Detroit Red Wings 7-5. They lost to Calgary 9-5. They've won. They beat the Blues 6-5 in overtime. So they have had to really lean on that offense. They've had some goalie performances over this stretch that have been good. They've had to lean on the offense, and you can afford to do that when you have guys other than Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl stepping up to help chip in. So it's like the stretch early in the season where the Wild were winning pretty much all of their games, even though they were winning them like 5-4 or 6-5, because the offense was able to step up and was able to kind of pick up some of that slack. So it's going to be a game that I think will feature plenty of scoring because the Oilers goalies, especially the last time these two teams locked up, the Wild just absolutely jumped all over them. So does that happen again? It could, but it ultimately is going to come down to a couple of things that the Wild will need to keep an eye on in this matchup. And we'll tell you what those are as we continue to look ahead to tonight's matchup against the Edmonton Oilers. We'll take a look at some of the keys to the matchup here tonight. That's coming up here on Locked On Wild. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? I have no idea. And why wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend anywhere from 30 to 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? RockAuto.com is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. And RockAuto.com's prices are reliably low for every customer. So head to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Make sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. All at rockauto.com. The Locked On Wild podcast is sponsored in part by Jake Danielson with First Class Mortgage. First Class Mortgage is your friendly local mortgage company in Maple Grove, Minnesota. If you're looking to purchase a new home, cabin, or investment property in Minnesota, Wisconsin, South Dakota, or Florida, give Jake a call today. If you're a homeowner, now is still a great time for a quick refinance review to see what options are available to help tap into your equity and fund those home improvement projects, consolidate debts, or put cash in your hands. First Class Mortgage is a local, family-owned lender, and the best part about it is that Jake does the shopping for you to find competitive rates and programs for all of your home financing needs. With over 700 five-star reviews, Jake at First Class Mortgage will be sure to deliver first-class experience and service for any of your home purchase or refinance needs. Plus, best of all, Jake is a born and raised Minnesota and sports fan who would be honored to be your mortgage guy too. Contact Jake for a no-cost, no-obligation mortgage review at 763-416-6789. You can also email him at jake@firstclasscorp.com. Again, 763-416-6789. Make sure to mention the Locked On Wild podcast to receive a credit towards a free appraisal. Again, 763-416-6789. Some restrictions do apply. First Class Mortgage is NMLS number 322842, and Jake's NMLS is 2025218. This is not an agreement to lock into an interest rate under Minnesota law. First Class Mortgage is an equal housing lender. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Locked On Wild is free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. So, looking at this matchup against the Edmonton Oilers, similar script to pretty much every game that has happened recently. The Oilers are number 4 in the entirety of the NHL in power play percentage. And so, once again, we are going to have to see a clean penalty kill from this Minnesota Wild team. And with a guy like Evander Kane, who is not afraid to throw some muscle around, it's going to probably lead to some opportunities for said penalty kill to show us what it's got. And the results continue to be extremely underwhelming on the penalty kill. So the Wild are going to have to figure out a way to even that out and to come up with some chances of their own. Well, the good news there is that the Oilers' penalty kill is only slightly better than the Wild's penalty kill. The Oilers are at about 77%. The Wild are at slightly above 75. So power play opportunities going to be critical in this game. Offense, with the top level players such as McDavid and Draisaitl, you probably have to give the edge there to the Oilers. Defensively, I think I give the edge to the Wild because, the Oilers do have some good defensemen at the top of their D core, but beyond that, it's not a particularly good picture. And goaltending, I go again to the Wild. So special teams might be the spot where the Oilers can hope to take advantage to try to, even the score, even the stakes a little bit. But the other X factor in this game, and one that gives me more confidence in the Minnesota Wild, is because they've got a couple of guys on defense that can do what few teams this year have been able to do, and that is keep Connor McDavid off the score sheet. If you look at games for McDavid since the month of March, McDavid has not registered a point in 1, 2, 3 total games since the month of March began, in which he has not registered a point. That was a loss to Montreal, a loss to Calgary, and a loss to the Avalanche. So if you can keep McDavid off the score sheet entirely, you have a very good chance to even it out with that offense and to come away with the win. What did the Minnesota Wild do to Connor McDavid the last time these two teams squared off in that 7-3 win? They kept him off the score sheet entirely. What did they do the first time that the Wild beat the Oilers, which was a 4-1 win back in December? They held him to 1 assist. And the other thing, too, in those games is you have a guy who on the season so far has just under 300 shots and, is averaging anywhere from 5 to 7 per game. So in the first matchup against the Wild, he had 4 shots. In the second matchup against the Wild, he had 3. So you are limiting the amount of times he even is able to get a shot on goal because of Jonas Brodin. Jonas Brodin has made it his personal goal to hound Connor McDavid and to keep him quiet. And there are few, like I just said, there are few in the NHL that have the ability to do this. And so if you're going to keep this team quiet and come away with a win in this game, Jonas Brodin's got to do it again. Now, Draisaitl, on the other hand, he has 1 assist in the 2 games against the Wild as well. He has 10 shots in the 2 games, and he comes in with just over 250 shots, 255 on the season. So, he is also capable of anywhere from 5 to 10 shots per game. It's a lot to ask of your team, but the Wild have shown the ability to do it against the Oilers. They're going to need to do it again. Keep Connor McDavid quiet, and the Wild can come away with a win here because I believe they will be able to break through against whoever is in net for the Oilers. They'll be able to break through and score. They'll be able to take care of power play opportunities. The biggest question mark for me is penalty kill and what McDavid does in this third matchup of the season. So if the Wild can control all those elements and can at least make it difficult for the Oilers on the power play, then they got a great chance of coming away with the win here tonight at the XL Energy Center. And so that is going to wrap it up for today's episode of Locked on Wild. So now that your first listen of the day is done, make sure that you head over to Locked on Sports Minnesota to catch the Ron Johnson Show. Ron covers all things Minnesota sports, and you can find Locked on Sports Minnesota wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just like Locked on Wild, we are free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts and on social media as well. So make sure to give us a follow, hit subscribe, and hit the notifications button on YouTube so that you don't miss out on any video episodes of the show. Locked on Wild is keeping you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.